So Jackie Katzev will be presenting on syntactic and prosodic marking of contrastive focus by Spanish-English bilingual.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Katzev. My research advisor was Mariana Gray, and our research was on the syntactic and prosodic marking of contrastive focus by Spanish and English bilinguals.
There you go.
Over this past summer, I went to Tarragona, Spain, and I worked in the Universitat Rovira i Virgili. And my abroad advisor was Dr. Joseph Demestre of the psychology department. So before I get into the logistics of my experiment, our project was based on the phenomenon of contrastive focus. And for those of you who may not be that familiar, contrastive focus is basically a type of narrow focus that focalizes a specific constituent of the sentence. So in sentence A, in contrast to contrastive focus, it's actually showing broad focus. It's just presenting new information. It's just hand on a card. Nothing is really in focus. Whereas sentence B is portraying clearly contrastive focus because it's rejecting the alternative of and, so it's saying no, Pam bought a car. So if someone asked what happened, and you would say Anne bought a car, but the person who actually bought the car was Pam, you would say no, Pam bought a car. So Pam is clearly in contrastive focus. And previous research has shown us that English speakers tend to use prosody to mark contrastive focus. So in relation to the previous sentence, no, Pam bought a car, that's showing prosody. So using the example, Mary wrote the letter, that's showing broad focus because nothing is exactly being focalized. But in contrastive focus, an English speaker would say Mary wrote the letter, so they're placing the focus on the subject, which is Mary. But research has also shown us that Spanish speakers prefer to change the word order, so they would prefer to use syntax. So with the sentence, Maria escribió la carta, that's showing broad focus because nothing is exactly being focalized, it's just new information being presented. But Spanish speakers, to show contrastive focus, would actually move the subject of the sentence to the end, and they would say La carta escribió Maria, which translates directly into Mary wrote it. Mary wrote the letter. And prosodic and syntactic strategies are possible in both languages, but they're not used the same. So an English speaker could say the person who wrote the letter was Mary, which is a totally acceptable way to say it, but that's not really the preferred method of saying it. We would much rather say Mary wrote the letter. And a Spanish speaker could say Maria escribió la carta, but it's actually more frequent that they place the subject at the end of the sentence. So our research questions were, what syntactic and prosodic strategies do Spanish and English speakers use to mark contrastive focus? And basically, like I said before, we expect to see that Spanish speakers will use syntax, whereas English speakers will use prosody. And how do Spanish and English bilinguals express contrastive focus in their L2, and do they transfer the strategies? We hypothesized that they would. We hypothesized that Spanish speakers will actually rearrange the order of the sentence when they're speaking their L2, and the same for English speakers. L1 English speakers will use focus marking in C2 and use intonation and prosody when they're speaking their L2, which is Spanish. We haven't tested that yet. This is basically on the first part, which is L1 Spanish, L2 English. And for our last question, when expressing contrastive focus by prosodic means, do Spanish and English bilinguals use prosodic cues in the same ways? So basically what we're asking is, do they use the same duration? Is the F0 peak alignment the same? And why is this important? Why should we care? Well, from a linguistic standpoint, we're basically just want to shed light on the acquisition of L2 prosody of contrastive focus. And more generally speaking, the results that we find could help us enhance Spanish language course curricula. So when I was in Spain, I tested 13 L1 Spanish, L2 English speakers at the university, and the second part, I would like to test 10 to 15 L1 English, L2 Spanish speakers here at Penn State. But for the first part, we're just going to focus on the L1 Spanish, L2 English, because that's the only data that I have. So for the materials, I actually constructed 30 sentences per language, so 30 sentences in English and 30 sentences in Spanish, that follow the structure of a subject-verb-object format, where either the subject or the object could be manipulated easily into having contrastive focus. So, for example, what would happen is we would present the participant with the sentence, and they would see it, and then they would be asked what happened, which would elicit broad focus because they're just presenting new information. So, for example, they could say the cat chased the pig. And then to elicit contrastive focus, we would ask them to correct the subject, so we could ask, did you say the bat? And then to elicit that contrastive focus, they would say, no, the cat chased the pig, or the pig was chased by the cat is also an acceptable way to say it. And then to elicit contrastive focus on the object, you could ask what happened, my dad plants trees. And then you could ask, did you say seeds? And then they would say, no, my dad plants trees. So the contrastive focus is placed on the object at that point. So for these tasks, we would ask them to, they would repeat it 2 times each for each task. And the first task, the speakers can rearrange the constituents of the sentence any way they want. So for the sentence, the cat chased the pig, they could say, the cat was the one who chased the pig was chased by the cat. Either way is acceptable, you can rearrange it however they want. But in the second task, they were not allowed to rearrange the constituents any way they wanted. We just wanted to see the contrastive focus and intonation in C2, so they were not allowed to change the order of the sentence. So we just wanted to see, no, the cat chased the pig. So in data analysis for task 1, there were 766 sentences that I transcribed orthographically. And then for each one, I would mark what strategy they used to mark contrastive focus. So for example, they could use prosody, which is just saying the cat chased the pig. Or they could also do clefting, which is following the structure of it was the cat who chased the pig, or the pig was chased by the cat. Clefting is basically a focus marking strategy for syntax. There's also other word order change, other strategies which went under the category of word order changes like dislocation and focus fronting. Just an example of dislocation, you could say one of the sentences was my boss rode a bike, and one participant said rode a bike my boss. So that's another example of word order changes. And focus fronting, you could say the lunch I bought, so that's also an example. And then in task 2, which I'm in the process of right now, we're segmenting sentences in Pratt, so I'm trying to see the duration and F0 peak alignment of those sentences that had contrastive focus in C2. So for the first task, this is just an example of clefting. This is what I coded. So the sentence was, no, it was Tim who picked the grapes, and this is just an example of what they said.
No, it was Tim who picked the grapes.
So that's an example of clefting, and then the second one was, no, John touched the fan. So this is where the contrastive focus was placed on the subject.
No, John touched the fan.
Okay, so you can see that the high pitch was on John. So basically, for the results, we saw that, well, these are the counts of strategies that were used for both languages, and you can see that word order changes were very rare in both languages, and that prosody is preferred when the contrastive focus is on the object. So that was probably the most preferred strategy. But then for clefting is preferred when the contrastive focus is placed on the subject, so you can see that on the left. And for future work, current work, right now I'm transcribing the duration and F0 peak alignment of in C2 focus marking. And yeah, I would just like to thank the prior community. It was a really great experience to work in the lab, and my abroad research advisor for helping me out there.
And we have time for questions. Annie, and then John.
In your research questions, you asked whether you would find effects of L1 transfer, but could you also predict the other way around, finding effects of L2 transfer if you were to test Spanish sentences? And the reason I ask this is because this might be a Puerto Rican thing, but I would I could say something like, no María escribió la carta, something like that, where I'm using the English word in my Spanish. And if you think this could be a possibility, do you think it would be styles?
I did see people do that. They didn't really, they didn't really switch the order of the sentences. They did just use just intonation to mark it, but there were a lot, I would say like around half the data they did also use collecting to like rearrange the sentence, but I'm not sure if that answers your question.
John, do you have a question?
Yeah, you, at the very beginning, you showed how in Spanish, for example, you could say, la carta la escribió María, where you put that resumptive pronoun in there. Did you find any examples of people trying to put a resumptive pronoun in English? You mentioned other changes in word order, like rode a bicycle, my boss, but did you get something like the letter, it wrote Maria, or Maria wrote it, or, you know, some kind of a resumptive pronoun there? Because that's pretty obligatory in Spanish. You would think that something like that might carry over.
Yeah, I don't think we saw many like that.
I'm thinking of another strategy, or in a natural conversation, John wrote the letter, Fred? John. It's just a single word answer. Did you find that? People doing that sort of thing in your department too, or were you able to?
They did at first because I guess they didn't understand the instructions that were given. I said you had to use all the constituents, so you couldn't just say, no, John did it. It had to be, no, John wrote the letter. So you couldn't omit any of the constituents.
So do you think that them paying more attention to using all the constituents might have
Prompted them.
prompted them to
I
use
tried
certain
not to.
strategies or not?
I tried not. I didn't give any examples. I didn't say, no, you should be saying it like this. I just said, you have to use all the constituents, but you can order them any way they want. So most of them got the hint, but.
Other questions? Thank you.